Oh, there it is. I was gonna say, I can move, we can share the agenda if you need that.
Here's the scoring sheet for principals at Ash Creek Elementary and Central High School, because I'm just not doing enough hiring and screening this week. It has been non-stop.
Much better having that. We're zeroing in on Oregon Community Foundation.
Oh, good. Oh, call to order the Tuesday, April 19th, 2020.
This conference will now be recorded.
Meeting of the Monmouth City Council. And I will ask Phyllis to call the roll, please.
Counselor Belts,
Here.
Counselor Carey,
Here.
Counselor Lopez is excused, Counselor McKeel. Here. Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Here.
Mayor Coons.
I am here. I just want to make sure I was muted as I entered the meeting. And for the flag salute this evening, Counselor Carey, if you could lead us.
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I am going to mention once again that although mask requirements are being lifted everywhere, every day, something new, we will continue to wear them in this meeting as a courtesy to members who are joining in person who have health compromised family members. And we want to see each other in person. And we have chosen as a group to do that and ask that of our guests. So tonight, we will start off with the consent calendar as usual. That consists of the minutes of the meeting of April 5th. And those meetings were in the packet. If you have any corrections or additions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll.
I move approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Counselor Carey. In a second.
Second.
Counselor Bells, maybe.
Yep,
I wasn't.
Selena Silva.
Thank you, Selena Soliveros. And seeing no corrections coming from Counselor McKeel online, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And a hand signal from Counselor McKeel. Any opposed? Seeing none, we will move on to our business agenda. We have a couple of items there tonight, some work session, and then we plan to adjourn our meeting this evening after that. So for the business agenda tonight, I think I saw our finance director and international traveler, Janet Chenard, here to present the Q3 financial report. But first of all, we need to hear about the race.
Well, it was a long race. 26.2 miles, 42 kilometers, and I made it. On a lot of cobblestones and with much cheering of some very wonderful Italian crowd people and my husband as well.
Great job. What an
Thank you.
accomplishment.
Thank you. It was a bucket list item for my 60th birthday, and I'm just glad that I didn't get lost like I did on my half marathon in Newport in January. Fortunately, there were 10,000 other people there, none of them wearing masks. And so, yeah, there was lots of people to follow and not get lost. So thank you for your interest and appreciation. And with that, maybe I'll move on to the third quarter report. Thank you, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. We are 3/4 of the way through this fiscal year, and I'm pleased to say that things are looking fairly good. We do have a number of areas where we expected to overspend, and I brought those to your attention throughout the year. And now is time to actually deal with those through some contingency transfers, which are appropriations, as you know, that we deliberately have in case of such circumstances. As well, we'll have some supplemental budgets. That's the next agenda item. But I just wanted to draw to your attention that for as far as spending goes, the only funds where I see any particular issue are the gas revolving fund because of high gas prices, the water fund just because we've had a lot of activity there that ended up being more than we planned on, and the library department, which may or may not need the extra appropriations, but in an abundance of caution, I would like to not have to come back to you again. So I'm going to seek a little bit more there. As far as the rest of the report, the green lights and yellow lights have not changed a lot. We are still, our fines and forfeitures are lower than they have been in the past, and that is a reflection of a variety of things. We are just holding court twice a month with our transitional space. The police force is having some turnover and some family leave situations that are causing it to be a challenge for them to be doing that level of patrol. They are fighting the fires that come up and doing a wonderful job as they are wont to do. But as a result, our fines and forfeitures are low. And otherwise, tourism is one of the ones I keep wanting to draw attention to because our hotel transient room taxes remain very good despite the COVID situation. And we have not that many places to stay in town, but the ones that are here are doing relatively well. So that's worth noting. I don't think there's anything else new that's worth noting there. I will draw your attention to the investment report at the end where, as I have mentioned, that the pool does lag interest rates as they begin to rise. We are starting to see some interest rate rise in the pool, in the state local government investment pool. But it may behoove me, as time permits, to put a few of our reserve balances into something higher yielding as the pool is, to give the pool time to catch up. It's always a balancing act because if you place it out 18 months at the rate right now, the pool will catch up maybe in 18 months and then you'll have had this lower yielding instrument. So that's something that, again, once we get through the budget process and such, I would like to take another look at that and at our investment policy and make sure that we're doing the best that we can, given that interest revenue is not something that we count on to pay for operations. With that, I'd welcome any questions you have about the third quarter report.
And questions? Comments?
Janet, one of the acronyms that I was unclear on and it popped up, it's an obvious one, I think, but I just don't know what it is. What's the TIF turnover that you referenced a couple times?
TIF?
Yes.
That's the tax increment financing that comes with our urban renewal agency. And so those are the dollars that we get as property taxes through the urban renewal district.
Okay. You know, the comment, no question, but the comment is this is to me, this is an example of good budgeting, a good planning on the part of the budget committee and certainly the professional staff. You know, we're hitting pretty, you know, there's some things we can't control, obviously, but boy, our expenditures were closer on that than we typically, I mean, that's great. So kudos to all that were involved with the budgeting process and continued good news from MyNet, and we'll hear more about that, I know, but just excited to see this.
Thank you.
And I just
Right.
wanted,
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros.
yes, thank you. So did I read correctly that the WinPeg funds are going to go back into the general funds? And will
Correct.
that help some of what's happening with, that you're seeing with the increases?
Well,
Or,
so as an initial, that will be part of the next piece of business discussion, how we're going to do that. But essentially, as a first course of action, the WinPeg dollars will go back into the general fund, and then we'll have to pay out independents their share, obviously. But the remaining dollars that stay, we will still try to dedicate, especially the capital funds, to expenditures related to communications and related to technology. And of course, with our new city hall coming online, that will be an area where we do need some support. So I think the timing is actually really nice that way, because we weren't sure where that money was going to come from.
yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. This is really nice work. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and in related matters, we are going to consider some changes to the original budget. There are a couple of ways to do that. And one of them requires us to actually have a public hearing. And so at this time, Janet, I'm just going to have you explain a little bit about what we're going to do, and then I'll open the public hearing for the official report, ask for public comments. We'll close the hearing, and then outside of the hearing, then we will take action as needed.
Great. Yes. So we have a number of actions that I've put all into one staff report. Some of them require the public hearing, which is the supplementary budget part of the process. And the supplementary budget process is impacting 4 of the funds that are noted in the staff report. It's impacting the water fund because we have a situation where our auditors called to our attention last year that under GAAP, we should be treating these interfund loans that we have had between the water fund and the sewer fund as actual debt service, which is not was not a treatment that we accorded it in the past. And so that actually requires a supplemental budget because we didn't have debt service appropriations in the water fund. So that's the first part of the supplementary budget, is to create that category of debt service. Then we are also going to be doing a supplementary budget in the gas revolving fund because there are not enough contingencies in the gas revolving fund to cover the spike in prices that we've seen. Fortunately, because it's an internal fund, we actually charge out the price of the fuel to our internal users as well as our external agency users, such as MyNet and the fire district. They buy fuel from us and we get a margin on that. So we have increased revenue to cover those increased expenses. So it's not an impact to the bottom line, but again, requires a supplemental budget and notice of that supplemental budget because it is actually greater than 10% of the appropriations that we estimated we would need at this time last year. So that's the gas revolving fund. With the WMPEG and the WMPEG Capital Fund, the requirement there is also to create a category. We're not going to be overexpending per se, but we don't have a category to transfer out appropriations from either the WMPEG Fund or the WMPEG Capital Fund to send the money back to the general fund and be able to close out the two funds. So that in fairly simplistic terms is what the four supplemental budget requirements are. I have attached the notice that was published in the Polk.io and on our website so that the public would be aware as I am required to do. And so if there's any questions about that from after the, I'm happy to take them.
Right, so at this time, I would like to open a public hearing for the purpose of considering supplemental budgets and proposed changes as listed in the hearing notice, including the creation of two new types of expenditures in the water fund and gas revolving fund. In the water fund and in the WMPEG Capital Fund, and a change in appropriations in the gas revolving fund. I think that's right. And so at this time, we'll take public comment. We have no one in the room who wishes to provide comment on the budget, supplemental budget. And City Recorder Phyllis Bowman, did we have anyone submit comment or anyone identify online as wishing to give comment?
Did not have anyone submit comments, Mayor Kunz, nor is there anyone online.
Thank you. All right, so this time in, anyone have questions of Janet about this process or about these expenditures?
Do we want to close the public hearing?
I was going to have them ask questions first and then close it and take a vote. Well, that could be part of the hearing record. I don't know. That's how I do it.
That's fine.
That's how I do mine. I do these all the
Madam
time.
Mayor, as you listed the items that we're considering, you mentioned the WMPEG Capital Fund, but failed to mention the WMPEG Fund
And the
in
WMPEG
general,
fund as
which
well.
there are two separate funds there. So
Yes.
I just want to make sure that was in the record.
Yep, changing those as well. Any other questions about this? All right, I will close the public hearing. And based on that information, and we do need to create a resolution to change those appropriated categories and amounts.
And I should add before we move on with the resolution, since I did build it all together into the same resolution, just a brief explanation of the requirement for the contingency transfers, which are not part of the supplemental budgets, but are additional appropriations that are available and in all cases are within the constraints of the 15% of appropriations. So I'm just taking full advantage of the fact that we have contingencies available in, for example, the gas fund and the WMPEG funds in order to create enough appropriations in those funds to do the activities. And then in the general fund, the library department is very, very close. It's at 74 point, I want to say 8% or 9%. It's in your document expended. And as recently as a month ago, they were over their target. So they do have a retirement coming, and they do have some other expenditures that have gone a little bit above what they anticipated, their insurance expense. So in an abundance of caution, I'm asking for 5,000 in contingencies for them so that we can be sure not to, as they say, bust appropriations.
Okay, so we're going to understand that there's a couple of more adjustments that need to be made that don't require the public hearing. Any questions or concerns, or there is a proposed motion in your?
I would love to move adoption of
Resolution number 1939, approving transfers and supplementary budgets for the fiscal year 2021-22 and directing the finance director to make appropriate entries.
Second.
There is a motion from Counselor Oberst and a second from Counselor Belts to adopt resolution number 1939 as presented. And unless there are additional questions, seeing none, Phyllis, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Oberst,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor Belts.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Resolution number 1939 taken care of, and Janet can get to work to, like she says, you're juggling the new budget and the old budget. The great fun time of year. Speaking of fun, with that, then I have a brief mayor's report. I have been able to attend a few events in the last couple of weeks, some of which I think are related to some of my other volunteer efforts. The Western Oregon University has had interim president Jay Kenton serving since last July upon the retirement of Dr. Rex Fuller. The university has been undergoing a presidential search, and that effort is coming to fruition. I'm going to thank Council President John Kerry. He was invited to actually show the candidates around town and connect them with the community. So before finalists visited, they got the primo tour, including not only the town, but of course, the athletic fields and facilities of Western they might not have otherwise seen. Marty Wine was able to join to greet a couple of the candidates as they came to campus. And then, of course, I was able to meet all of them as a member of the Board of Trustees. So tomorrow, the University Board of Trustees, hopefully, will be announcing the name of the new president and introducing that person to the campus and the community. There will be a reception at a later date. This was a really condensed process. So when there is a community reception announced, then I'll make sure everyone understands and is invited so we can introduce our new university president. I was also yesterday invited to a forum put on by West Valley Hospital and Salem Health. Councilor Oberst, wearing his West Valley Hospital Foundation board hat, was there as well. And I understand Lane's been involved in the development of a new strategic plan for Salem Health's not only hospital in Polk County, but their clinics. And they are starting to gather some select input into that plan, and then we'll be communicating out further. And Marty, you're attending tomorrow, a session tomorrow as well. So getting some great feedback from community members, not only about our health needs, which they have consultants and assessments and they have data they can collect, but really hearing from different people about how those needs affect us in the community and what's sort of the future of healthcare for us. And I think it will be a great process. So that's also ongoing work that you'll be hearing more about over time. If you'd like to get involved with that, I think we could invite a couple more voices in as well. And I think that's kind of it. So I will turn it over to reports of council representatives for our hardworking boards and commissions. Anybody have some meetings to report about?
Yes.
I do. Thank you, Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coons. So we met for the Historic Commission and discussed several things. The Historic Commission has a CLG grant application that was approved for $15,700 instead of the requested $10,500. So the additional grant funding can be used for historic brochure update that we've been talking about, a walking tour, and really looking at possibly next steps of developing an RFP to hire a historic architect, looking into the historic building preservation plan for the Evangelical Church. So some really great news. And then we are still meeting with our intern for the Historic Commission, Jackson, who is with Western, and he's doing some really great work and finding information about the Columbus Day storm. And he reported back of information about agriculture that we didn't really have, of how the storm affected a lot of our farms, different crops. And so he'll be gathering a lot of those statistics, which are that's really interesting. And then some activities that we have planned for the Historic Preservation Month include, which happened in May, and it's we're going to have a street banner over Main Street. We're going to install a display at the library and host a ceremony to celebrate the city's newest building to be listed on the National Registry, which is the Buford Stanley House on 342 Monmouth Avenue. And then we've discussed some other things to include, some more library displays, maybe some highlighting some Pioneer Women books at the library. And so we're still discussing maybe some additional things that we can add to Historic Preservation Month. And let's see, we did get information. Jack Fox, the property owner of Ross Grocery Store, did refuse the grant for the easement for the train mural display, citing, they are going into transition with different owners and some other concerns. So we took that as, okay, an opportunity to look at other sites, and that's what we've been doing. So the members of the Historic Commission are tasked to drive around. And so myself and my spouse, Felix, who has an artistic eye, did that this weekend and gave some feedback on possible different sites that this mural could possibly happen. So we'll find some place, I'm sure.
Be a trolley shelter.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll have a good turnout for that. And then we did appoint a new commissioner, Alice Rudster. Oh, I apologize for chopping that up. She will be attending our next Historic Commission meeting, and we're thrilled to have her on our board and to meet her with some of her expertise. So thank you.
Great report. Thank you. Councilor Oberst.
Had a Parks Board meeting last Wednesday. The first big piece of news, which I think everyone here is aware of, and it's been mentioned before, but Senator Patterson and Representative Evans at the close of the legislative session managed to work in funding for the skate park from the state. And so the skate park is paid for.
That's fantastic.
Between the donations and so on that we've had and the money that our two representatives secured for us. Now, that was going to be part of an over $1 million grant request from state parks, but now we don't need that part. So the grant request gets smaller, which you would help get it funded. But, when I first moved to Monmouth Recreational Park, which is kind of this big empty piece of ground that was very underutilized, and bit by bit it's been coming along. This proposed grant would add a 4-season bathroom so that there would be bathrooms available down there at all times, or at least all daylight hours. I'm not sure what the hours would be. Additional benches and trees, improvements to the parking lot and pedestrian connectivity. But the big thing is, and this is what we hope gets state parks' attention, is trails and adding a bunch of walkways through that park around the existing facilities that are there. And then for those of you who've been there, there's a large area to the north of the baseball field and headed towards the sewer lagoons, which is wetlands. And the proposal is to build a boardwalk that will reach out across those wetlands, eventually to a gazebo that would give you a fabulous view of the lagoon, which may not sound like the most wonderful thing to look at. The birds are astounding down there. And there are a number of serious birders in our community who kind of have an arrangement with Public Works to be able to go down there to do their bird watching. One time during my time in Cecil seat, State of the City's speech, I opened with a photograph of the lagoons because fog rising off the water one morning. It was actually quite an attractive photograph. You wouldn't think so, but you know, it's an interesting piece to have here, and taking advantage of its presence, if you will. So we're hoping that that gets funded. The big new business was the recreation grant funding, of which there were 6 applicants and 5 were funded at $500 apiece. The sip and paint, which was initially applied for to be out of town, but we talked to the applicant and we believe we can work out a modified deal that will be in the park, the Main Street Park. We funded the 4-H Outdoor Explorers Day Camp. The YMCA is going to have a youth track and field event, and they are working on a track and field league, from what I understood. The Gate wants to sponsor a day in the park where they will bring out some games and just trying to make the community aware of what they offer. And then there's some skaters in town who want to do an event that involves kids coming in, getting a blank board with an opportunity to decorate it and come back later and add the trucks. And so some people who might not be able to afford a skateboard will suddenly have not only a skateboard, but a skateboard of their own creation.
Oh.
That was just a fabulous thing.
Wonderful.
Those were all funded, and we'll see how all those play out over the next year. The next meeting will be May 11th, and we've been meeting down at Public Works in the conference room down there at 6 p.m.
Great. So they can go out and do site visits to the sewage lagoons. That's wonderful. All right, thank you very much. And Councillor Belts, do you have, nope,
The library board did not meet.
did not meet. Okay. And as usual, the Planning Commission always meets.
We always meet. However, the agenda for tomorrow night's meeting has been modified. There was a proposal for a subdivision to be considered, and a public hearing for that. That application has been withdrawn at the moment. However, the important agenda item as it relates to our business is they're going to be considering, as we have asked them to do, the distribution of marijuana dispensaries in town. And so I think in the next not too long, we can expect a recommendation from them on that, so we can get that piece of decision-making move forward. So that's tomorrow night, 7 o'clock online. They do meet here, but a high percentage of those folks are virtual attenders.
Yes.
Just, on the withdrawal of the Ash Creek subdivision application, we expect that to be refiled. So my admonition in the email last week to be wary of ex parte contacts and statements that might indicate predilection towards bias one way or another, I think would be wise just to continue, because that'll be back, and when it's back, it will probably be appealed no matter what the decision of the planning commission is. So it's been withdrawn, but it's only a reprieve from consideration. It'll be back.
Thanks for giving us permission to drive out of town north on Highway 9.
Yeah, I was concerned.
I'd hate to have to make you divert.
Right. I laughed when I saw that. That was very good.
I'm glad you
I have to avert my eye.
That's
If I go up all the
Don't
way.
look. That's right.
Most of us have to worry about SITE visits. John has to worry about SIGA.
Just get your dark glasses on.
All right, and Councilor McKeel, anything from your boards and commissions?
No, they did not meet. Thank you. The tree board did not meet.
Great. All right. That brings us to the city manager's report. So Marty?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have a couple of items. You may or may not know, but the management team, leadership staff of the city meet every Monday. That it coincides with the council meeting, and there were a couple of highlights of this week's management team meeting that I just wanted to share with you, and they mostly have to do with events that are coming up across our departments. Oh, but I'll start with a preview. I was writing my budget message, which you'll be seeing at our upcoming budget meeting, and one of the themes that I was that I'm telling the budget committee to expect to hear is that Monmouth is hiring, right? So we made a list as we were going around the table of the number of vacant positions and positions that we were trying to fill. And, you know, we have a workforce of about 70 people, and we at the moment are trying to fill 10 jobs, which is a significant number. So and we're experiencing this alongside every other organization with, you know, we're experiencing more turnover than ever. So just wanted you to know you're going to see lots of job opportunities at the City of Monmouth, and we're hoping to do a better job at the visibility of our recruitment and those efforts. So that's just a note for you. Here are some events that are coming up that I thought you might find interesting, because our program planning is beginning to incorporate in-person events. So the library is going to have its first program that's back in person in the Craft with a Cop event, which is on April 20th. That's tomorrow. And that they're excited to be welcoming people back to the library. We also, the Senior Center is going to be welcoming folks back May 7th for the pancake breakfast. So I think it might be things that people were excited about. And Senior Center will also be doing their ice cream social on April 29th. And this coming Friday, Senior Center is also doing their volunteer recognition event on Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. I think that's probably all I've got for now. We have a work session item later on City Hall project, and I've got lots to report, but just a chance for you to learn about what's going on with the project. So I think that's all I've got for City Manager report.
Right. Any questions about that? Great. And that brings us to our work session and our first item. We'll welcome PJ Armstrong from Minnet, kind of catch up on how things are going. We appreciate these updates. So come on up. And
thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to venture off script for just a second, but Councilor Oberst, I can personally attest to the comments you made about bird watching, and that boardwalk would be a great idea. To see those guys come through all the time with birds, but it was maybe a month ago. I opened the back door at Minnet, and sitting right on the edge of one of the ponds was a crow and a bald eagle, just sitting there side by side.
wow.
It was really cool. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate the space on the agenda to share some positive news and positive direction that Minnet is heading in our community. For those I haven't had a chance to speak with yet, just a little bit of background about my background. I got my start in telecom in 1994 with an engineering firm designing new and upgrades to traditional cable TV systems. I spent about 7 years there doing AutoCAD drafting and programming and system design and make-ready work and permitting and stuff like that. Before that company was bought out, I had a brief stop for a couple of years doing software QA, which is a really boring job. And then I arrived at Minnet in 2006. I joined Minnet and was responsible for overseeing the contract installation crews when we first started turning up services to our end users. I remained doing field work until about 2008, and then I moved into the Network Operations Center at Minnet. And I stayed there till about 2014 doing various roles. I did a lot of programming and provisioning, day-to-day support for our CSR and field staff. I spent several years learning the traditional cable TV system and the voice environment, but was mostly focused on the core routing and network environment. I was there until about 2015 and then took the position of field operations director, so became responsible for overseeing everything related to field work at Minnet. And then about 2016, became the operations director, and my responsibilities there were overseeing all operations on the field side and network operations. I was in this position until Don Patton's retirement in September of 2021, and I'm currently in the interim general manager role at Minnet. So for some of you who are very familiar with the long history at Minnet, Mayor Kuntz, Councilor Oberst, Councilor Carey, some perhaps less familiar, and I apologize if I'm missing names. We're actively in our fiscal year 22-23 budget process. For multiple reasons, as part of our company narrative, I wrote a very brief summary of the past, present, and future of MyNet because we've seen significant positive change over recent years. I felt that is it important for the community to know the trajectory that MyNet is currently on. We are in the best shape today than we ever have been before. For the benefit of those who have seen MyNet at less positive times, or those that don't have the background, I would like to read the company narrative that I did develop for our budget process. It may in part sound like I'm addressing the MyNet Budget Committee, but I think it paints an important picture that everyone I would like them to hear. So this is a little bit long, so. During the fiscal year 21-22 budget process, our company overview reported significant challenges we faced operating MyNet during the height of the COVID pandemic. While we certainly continue to feel its effects today in areas such as chain of supply, lead times, and rising costs, I'm hopeful that these challenges will soon be behind us, and happy to report on both realized and anticipated progress over the last and next fiscal year during our 22-23 budget process. We have successfully, seamlessly transitioned management and leadership of the MyNet organization. Following Don Patton's retirement in September, I took on the role of interim general manager. Together with John Cooper and Jason Saunders, our management and support teams have not missed a beat. In fact, I can say with confidence we are actively picking up the pace, continuing the positive trajectory we have been on over the past several years. Today, MyNet is as stable as it has ever been. I would like to take a moment to revisit a very brief chronology of MyNet. In the spring of 2006, we officially opened for business and began offering services to the residents of Monmouth and Independence. MyNet did well out of the gate, and by 2008, we were providing service to about 35% of homes and businesses in the market, referred to as penetration rate. Unfortunately, the roughly 5 years that followed were less fruitful. Absence of leadership and sound operational direction resulted in, among other things, nearly doubling the amount of debt taken out by the cities to cover MyNet operational expenses. The services we were able to provide were unsatisfactory at times, and our support was average. Operational and financial controls, where in place, were ineffective. MyNet was truly at the brink of failure. Tasked with turning the company around, Don Patton arrived as the new general manager in 2013 and immediately began rebuilding the MyNet team and operation. By 2016, our penetration rate reached 70%. A CFO was brought on board to ensure granular financial control of the business. A 5-year strategic plan was developed, and an assessment by an outside telecommunications consultant reported MyNet operations were as stable, efficient, and effective. By 2017, 2 significant hurdles remained. The original MyNet PON system was failing. In order to remain in business, a costly system-wide upgrade of the original network would be necessary. Also at the same time, and after reaching an 80% penetration rate, nearly unheard of in the telecommunication industry, it was proven that there is simply not enough passings in the Monmouth and Independence market to generate enough operating income to cover the annual bond debt service payments. In 2019, MyNet completed system upgrades to next generation XGS PON, bringing 10 gigabit capability to the end user. Due to efficiency of operations, condensed timelines, and quantity, the project was completed at nearly 50% of the original budget. It was also around this time that MyNet expansion into the Dallas market as Willamette Valley Fiber began. In short summary, and before taking a brief look ahead, the success we enjoy today results from a complete rebuild of the MyNet team and operation, system-wide upgrade of our service delivery platform, and expansion. Were it not for the hard work and dedication of Don Patton, the management group in place at MyNet today, and the rest of the MyNet team who truly make our company a success, I'm certain we would not have the same positive story to tell. Upgrades to XGS PON have given us the ability to deliver a product to our customers that is unparalleled in our market, both in quality of service and in the level of support that we are able to provide. Expansion into the Dallas market has resulted significantly in year-over-year reduction of annual debt service shortfall since inception. At 2 years old and still in its infancy at today about 30% penetration rate, achieved during the pandemic no less, this trend will only continue yielding positive results for our two cities. As you may have already heard, we fully anticipate meeting annual bond debt service obligations to our owner cities going forward. The significance of this turning point in Minnet history cannot be overstated. At 16 years in, the Minnet market is fully mature. We continue to enjoy high penetration rates and make pursuit of the homes and businesses we do not actively service an annual point of review and sales marketing efforts wherever applicable. Willamette Valley Fiber in the Dallas market will continue to grow, and the community will see the positive results of this year over year. This represents the past and present of Minnet at WVF, and I would like to take a moment to briefly look ahead. Right now, the telecommunications industry in our country is gearing up for broadband expansion on a massive scale. The COVID-19 pandemic greatly exposed well-known inequalities resulting from the digital divide, opportunities available to those who have access to great internet service, such as we provide at Minnet, versus those who only have access to inadequate service as typically offered by the incumbents. These expansion efforts will be primarily intended to address the unserved and underserved. The recently passed Federal Infrastructure and Jobs Act earmarked nearly $43 billion specifically for broadband expansion, which is working its way down to the states now. Additional funding opportunities exist at the state level, such as the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Minnet and Willamette Valley Fiber are ready and should participate in these opportunities. In fact, we have already begun. The same drive which led Don Patton to repair Minnet operations and put into place the mechanisms that would ensure our future success led me to pursue rural broadband expansion grant funding made available by our Polk County Commission, which I'll talk about that in just a minute here. In January, Minnet was granted nearly $1.3 million to expand our services into Rick Rial, rural areas north of Independence, and between Dallas and Falls City. Additionally, the county is funding our feasibility study to research the prospect of bringing fiber to the city of Falls City. With their investment in Minnet and Willamette Valley Fiber, Craig Pope and the County Commission recognize that our transparency and obligation to our customers as a public entity, capacity and desire to provide the best service and support in our markets is genuine and exceeds our competition. These are the types of opportunities that are in our future. Since deploying XGS-PON technology, we have repeated our potential for capacity and expansion over the years. This brought us to the Dallas market and will allow us to be players in other future areas. To further enhance our ability to meet bond debt service obligations and participate in the current industry-wide goal of closing the digital divide, Minnet and WVF must look forward to investing in communities within our digital reach where it makes operational and financial sense. We operate from a small town, but are recognized in the broadband community as remarkably successful, a reputation that we have not always enjoyed, but one that our management team is committed to maintaining as long as we have responsibility for and guidance of the operation. So that was my statement for the budget cycle this year. I'm hopeful that that provides a little bit of insight into where we were, and where we are, and where we're going. Additionally, tonight there's 3 areas that I would like to provide updates for you on. Some items of significance at Minnet over the last fiscal year. Those areas are services, a bit about expansion efforts, and community Wi-Fi. In terms of services, video, Jason Saunders presented to you a few months ago regarding video services, and you're aware of the ongoing industry trend with cord cutting. which led us to turn down our Easy Video service, as it no longer was not financially feasible for us to continue operating that service. What I want to tell you tonight is that process went very smooth. We had little impact from it, and to date we have lost less than 10 customers as a result of the Easy Video service being turned off.
Wow.
In regard to voice service, we are currently in the midst of a very positive change in our network operations center. We are transitioning away from our antiquated original Metaswitch voice platform, and we're transitioning to a cloud-based hosted solution. We are 8 rounds into transitioning customers from the old system to the new system on a weekly basis. We have 2 left. We anticipate that project to be completely done by the end of April. So ultimately by June, the voice service platform will be slightly more profitable, far easier for us to manage internally, and more importantly, brought up to date. And then in terms of data, not much to say that we don't already know. The world's reliance on data only continues to grow. And we're certainly no exception here. Jason Saunders and I talk fairly regularly about how much has changed in the last 5 years, where 5 years ago you could tolerate a blip in your internet connection, whereas today you can't. If that occurs, we have people at the front door of the office going, hey, what's going on with the internet and when's it going to be back up? It's really a service that needs to be on and active as close to 100% of the time as we can possibly make. Fiscal year, developed, implemented, tested resiliency in our data delivery platform. What that means is we maintain diverse upstream paths for our access to net outside of MyNet. So when one of our upstream providers outside of our control has an issue, they go down, our core routing environment is configured in such a way that all traffic flops over to another provider, to our secondary provider. We actually had a real world example of that last week. One of our providers had a maintenance window between 1 and 6 a.m. and I was up watching our graphs and watched it happen, watched the whole one of our providers go down and all the traffic flopped over seamless, so we don't have any interruption in our internet connection. That's something else we worked on this year. I want to give you an update on the expansion efforts, which I mentioned in the company overview. I've been fortunate to develop a very positive relationship with Polk County. In October, they reached out to service providers in the county and stated they had some ARPA funding available, had conducted a broadband survey and study and identified some areas of need in the county that were underserved, and wanted to receive proposals from service providers who would be able to build out to these areas. I drafted 3 separate proposals for areas that fit where MyNet currently is. And in January, MyNet was awarded about $1.3 million for the 3 proposals that were submitted to do construction that would cover the town of Rick Real and a couple of rural transport routes north of Independence heading out that direction. A rural area south of Dallas and what would be east of Falls City. And then also a feasibility study for the city of Falls City itself. Since then, we've been working through formal legal agreements with the county. The engineering process has started. Walkout for Rick Rail has been completed. We're about to start that in South Dallas. We've begun putting permits together to start attaching and submitting those to the power company for attachment and to actually start construction. And I believe I anticipate the construction for the Rick Rail will start very soon. Once that's completed, we'll follow that with South Dallas. The Falls City feasibility study at the same time is actively underway. We have a community survey that is out. Jason Saunders and his team on the 7th and 8th of April were out door knocking and handing out flyers and getting as much interest in the community as they could in response to that survey, with the intention being to identify the current state of the broadband and need that they have in that community for better service. At the same time, we are working with a telecommunication consultant, and they are doing an engineering and a financial piece of that feasibility study, where they're going to be able to tell us it's going to cost this much to build the network in Falls City, and the financial modeling of what's the return on investment and over what period of time. The entire goal of this is to show a need in the community. There is additional funding coming down from the state, which I understand is probably more towards the end of the calendar year. And with this feasibility study that is funded by Polk County, it'll bring us well in line to begin the process of proposals for grant funding when that becomes available, and to hopefully eventually be able to do that build out. And then lastly, I wanted to talk just a minute about the community Wi-Fi project that we have in the works. You may or may not be aware, as a result of grant funding early in the pandemic, MyNet constructed a cities-wide wireless network. So we have 25 total sites around Monmouth and Independence. The initial intention was for free access for Central School District students who do not otherwise have access to broadband during the pandemic. The sites are strategically located with the idea being that they could go up to these sites and download homework or turn homework in. It's a pretty cool solution. We have a cloud-based management system. We preloaded over 5,000 Chromebooks into the system that were provided to students by Central School District. So students roll up, they have their Chromebook, it just automatically connects. The access is managed by Central School District, so if it's a Chromebook that they handed out, it will automatically connect. The content that they're able to go to is managed by Central School District, so on that part, it's a closed network. It's only accessible in that manner. But MyNet and our board of directors is about to begin discussing additionally turning up another network, which is completely doable on this infrastructure, with the idea being free community Wi-Fi provided by MyNet in the cities. I don't have a lot of detail because the idea is in its infancy, but it is a way to better utilize the network that we already have out there, and bring something additional to the community. So I really see it as a cool solution potentially that would be for events at Main Street Park, or somebody at Pioneer Park or Madrona Park that is, using a basketball court or exercising and wants to get Wi-Fi at the same time. Those are the updates that I had tonight. Thank you for your time. I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that our door at MyNet is always open. If you ever want to stop in, tour our operations facility, or sit down and talk about what we have going on, we'll always make the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PJ. And yes, I will also attest to the fact that when they switch, if you have the telephone service and they switch it over and you don't pay attention that there's a new service with new commands, that you get very personal attention from the top of the company to when you say, hey, I can't get my voicemail anymore. You get a nice email from PJ and Jason telling me I overlooked the instruction.
I mean, that's one of the things I always tell everybody, we can provide a really great service because of the infrastructure that we have, but what really we do well is support. We're local, we're here, you're going to call, you're going to get somebody that's right down at the office. If a trouble call comes in, it's 99% of the time that trouble call is solved within 4 hours. That's not something that you get from our competitor, and that is what we do really well.
Yes, Councilor Bell.
This may be a bit tangential, but I'm curious, is there a website, a place, a way, if there's a particular program you want to watch, that you can figure out where that program is? Because I have all the apps and I ask it to find a show for me, and it then comes up and says, well, please pay $2.99 for this. It's like, I know I got it free last month.
How can I figure that out?
Yes, there is. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but there absolutely
Oh,
is.
please,
That does
please
exist.
tell me.
I could send you an email.
Thank you.
Yep, and I bet you.
Actually, send it to Phyllis and she can send it to
All right,
everybody.
okay.
I bet I'm not the only person that wonders that. Thank you, PJ.
What is it called? Just watch.
Just watch?
Just watch.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Turn to young people when you need it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Thank you, Zach. Thank you to our videographer, Counselor Obers.
Quick comment, I was sitting in the middle of the community firestorm between 2006, 2016. And it's really, really nice to hear that, you know, things are going the way I always knew they would. And I was so thrilled when Don came here because I knew that we had somebody who got how to do this right.
Yep.
And it's been a long, slow process, but good work. And I'm just tickled with the idea of, you know, MyNet continuing to expand its footprint and becoming Polk County Net, you know, the way things are going. And I have this notion that you could probably expand beyond that someday if need be. And, you know, I know that the incumbents don't like companies like MyNet, but they don't do anything to offer good service, and they open the door for you guys. So keep that. You know, this is good stuff.
Thank you.
And I just, you know, as I look over, I just took notes kind of on what you were saying, just as a reminder to me. The notion of 2 years in Dallas and you're at 30+% penetration already, holy mackerel. You know, that's astounding. When there's an incumbent who's been there for 40 years or something. So again, that's like, keep up the good work, and
Thank you.
proud of the company and proud of the leadership that Don and you and the people who work for you, with you. So
Thank you.
yeah, just as big an attaboy as I guess.
Thank you.
And Counselor Obers, since it's easier if you speak closer to your mic rather than sitting back and chatting.
Sorry.
For those online.
Feeling cramped
And
at the
Counselor
table. You are
Salinas-
correct. I
Counselor
sit correct.
Salinas Oliveros?
Yes, thank you so much. And I don't know if people realize, but there's one thing that I remember really clearly when MyNet was starting up, and I've lived in Monmouth Independence for such a long time, and I only knew this because I had a student at Chemeketa who took one of my courses. They were interviewing. She's bilingual, and she was interviewing for MyNet to work here, and her family is here. And I was like, MyNet? I didn't even know at that time because it was just the start. But the student ended up also making bilingual commercials for MyNet because I saw her on TV.
Yeah.
And and I just want to point out that even when you were starting, you were considering the community and considering reaching out to the larger community. And that's something that I wanted to point out because that's just so important. From the get-go, you were like, we have to do this.
Yep.
And but I feel really good, one, that you hired a Chemeketa student, but also that you really kept in mind, you know, the community that you're serving. So I do want to thank you for that. And it's excellent service. We've always had excellent service with MyNet. So, and then just the last thing with the cloud base, I love hearing that too. I serve on the Computer Science Advisory Board at Chemeketa, and cloud base has been like the thing talked about for at least the last 5 years. So when I heard you say it, I was like, oh, that's fantastic. I know what he's talking about. And that's really where everything is going right now.
It is,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And actually, our managed Wi-Fi solution is the same thing, the Plume pods that we have, and it's a mesh Wi-Fi system. And that's something I didn't talk about tonight, but that's forward-looking as well, where, you know, we were once providing a router, and it was adequate to stick a router in your house here at the edge, and that's all you needed.
Yeah.
And it's not today, because, you know, people at the other side of the house are on their phones, and kids are on their phones, and that's not the way it used to be. But same thing, cloud-based management system, that's where it's going. And, yeah, I will repeat again, and I know I read that verbatim, but I'll repeat again, you know, when Don came in, the structure and the management, you know, there were problems going on there. And one of the things that he really did was turned the structure around at MyNet, put expectations down. He kept the people that needed to be there, and he did not keep the people that didn't need to be there. And we continue with that philosophy, and we continue with that philosophy about being involved in the community. And, you know, Jason himself is really involved in a lot. He's done a lot. I mean, even in like the Dallas market to be involved and generate community response. And we try and share that with our board of directors. You know, when we get those positive response, somebody goes, what internet provider should I go with? And it's just like Willamette Valley Fiber. And that's the facts. And that stuff speaks for itself.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the questions.
Yes, Councillor Carey.
You know, a number of things have changed since Don came on board, and fortunately, you've been able to carve out a bigger role for yourself because
Yep.
your broad experience is clearly part of the reason for the success. But one of the other things that's changed is the messaging. You know, when the years, several of the early years that I was on the MyNet board, we were on defense. We were on our heels because everybody had a complaint, whether it was water bill in Independence or not enough passings in Monmouth, or everybody had a gripe.
Yep.
And through that all, you guys, not only based on performance, but also on some initiative and some positive messaging, turned it around. I mean, the MyNet was at one point, I believe, probably viewed as a bit of a negative. It is a 100% asset right now.
Thank you.
In the mission that I showed the different presidential on the community, and one of the stops that we made, just a drive-by, I was able to explain part of that MyNet story. And to a person, they were thrilled with that, impressed with that. It gave them a sense of the management capabilities we have in town and the initiative that we took years ago to make this happen. So, you know, good job. You've turned it in really the right direction. That said, I'd like to, you sort of, you know, that you're getting a lot of pressure to expand to Rickreall and to expand to Falls City and the rural areas, which is essential, and I think we need to do it. I know when the consideration was underway as to whether or not to go to Dallas,
Yep.
there was some consideration there and quite a bit of sharp pencil working on whether it penciled out to do that. Now, in that case, we didn't have a lot of, you know, upfront investment. The company didn't.
Right.
I'm wondering how you'll weigh these sort of smaller markets and their ability to pencil out as it relates to your fiduciary responsibilities to the two cities.
Well, I will say, if we're talking about Rickreall and South Dallas, this is free grant money that they handed us to go build this infrastructure.
Yep.
We're not putting a dollar into it,
Mhm.
and that's coming from the county. If you're talking about a build out, and so is the feasibility study for Falls City. If you're talking about a build out to Falls City, yeah, that's why we're doing the feasibility study. They absolutely have to tell us, you know, if we can get the state of Oregon to grant 100% of that, I mean, it just absolutely makes sense. If it is something where there's a match requirement, well, then we need to start talking about what are the options for us to come up with that. If it's a 10% or a 20%, is that something that we can do and it makes sense over time? Is it something that the county is interested in assisting us with doing? Those are the kind of thoughts that I have in answer to that question, at the moment at least.
Good, very good. I anticipated that and glad to hear it.
It obviously absolutely has to have zero effect on our ability to make the bond debt service payments in their entirety, as we've stated, is our anticipation for the future.
Thank you.
Councillor McKeelda, do you have any questions for PJ?
No, I'm just really impressed with MyNet. It's just such an exciting service that we have. So just thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Counselor Carey, I just want to say thank you for your comment. I really cannot wait, in regard to the reputation, I cannot wait to go back and tell the team that. They're really going to love to hear that, because that's something we really have worked hard on, especially those of us who have been there. And there's many of us who have been there for many years, and we, bared the brunt of that, and it's turned around, and it is where it is today. And to hear that from, a counselor there, I appreciate that greatly.
Very welcome. You guys have earned it.
Deserve.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, and we'll turn it back to City Manager Marty Wine to update on the thing across the parking lot from
City Hall update.
City Hall. It's
Thing
called.
across the parking
Sticks
lot.
and bricks.
Yes, so council, I realized that my intention was to bring you a status report every quarter or so about what was going on with the project, and it had been a little while, so I think it was timely for me to bring you a status update. So I'm not asking for any action requested tonight. I just wanted to give you just sort of status report about where we are with the project. I prepared a report that was included in the agenda, and so if you've read that, I think you'll get the gist of what I'd like to report about. But even since the time we published the agenda, we've had a change or two, so I can update you about that. I'm going to ask our city recorder to please share the presentation or make me a presenter. I put together some slides because I think it's more interesting for you to look at those than to. Thank you. See, we'll have to actually probably should have figured this out ahead of time. Let's see. Thank you for your patience. See if that works. Okay, so as I mentioned, I don't have, a lot of this is in the staff report that I gave you. I just thought it would be more interesting to just share some of this so that you could read some. This comes from a presentation that I've given over the last month to the Emeritus Society at Western Oregon University. We also are meeting monthly with our key communicators, and I've been invited to a couple of different neighborhood groups to just talk about the project. So I grabbed some of those slides and wanted to share them with you too. One of the things that I think it's been really important to help people remember about what our new City Hall is going to look like is that the design of it was a couple of years in the making in terms of getting community input, and really what the community was seeing in the design concept was a building that would really fit well with our downtown, and that had a good, that followed the same form as many of our buildings downtown. So the idea is that I think what I'm trying to do is also share with you some of the cool qualities about this building. Once it opens, you're going to say, yes, this is why we wanted this thing. Cool. The concept that our architect has come up with and the design comes along with mass timber construction. And one of the reasons that that was also something that resonated with the community is that it's a locally, regionally sourced product and has some sustainability aspects that I think resonated with the community. One of the other great features about the new building will be that there will be more meeting space that will be open to the public and accessible for our community to use. And most of all, because you know what our 93-year-old building looks like now, we're going to have a building that's functional and accessible to everyone in the community. So that's, I think some of these things you know about our City Hall building. We've assembled the funding for it. It comes from reserves from prior sale of property. We thank the voters very much last year for approving the bond measure. And our urban renewal agency is going to be chipping in funding. So what we're telling people is that we have $9 million to build this building. I wanted to give you an update about construction. I'll probably pause here the longest in my update to you tonight. I think I mentioned in my Friday notes last month that we've had some transitions on the construction team, including that there's been a change in our primary architect from FFA. And we also have made a change on our construction management team and have a new owner's representative in a firm called OTAC. And so they're good at doing this kind of owner's representative work. And I will admit that putting this team together, we're pretty late past the design phase to be putting together this team. And that'll come into play in some of the other news I have to share tonight. So, and then Swinnerton is our general contractor. We brought them aboard in January after a competitive process, and they are out trying to hire their subcontractors right now. They went out to bid in March for 5 of the elements to try to get a handle on long lead time items, including demolition and excavation, and then mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And as you can expect, some of those bids have come in well above what we had budgeted. So when that happens, we're now in a round of conversation about what to do about that. So what's happening right now, and the reason I think if there's anybody wondering why there's not any activity on the site, before we go to demolish or build anything, we're going through a final value engineering step. And I've spent the last, actually, so I guess it's Tuesday, yesterday and today, and most of tomorrow, I will spend with our construction team to go through the current design that we've got and figure out how we're going to be able to deliver our project on budget and given what we're learning about the bid environment. So the value engineering process is important. We had gone through several steps of value engineering with FFA through the design process, but this is the last chance before we start building something to coordinate. One of the things I put in my staff report, and I'll just repeat, is that what's come up as our team has come together is that you've got your general contractor who builds things, right? And you've got our owner's rep who also has lots of experience building things. They've looked at this design and they said, the structural system is, while it's great to be using cross-laminated timber, basically, if you look at the design, I brought you some pictures. If you look at the rendering, what we're asking this building to do is to have a glass first floor support a brick second floor. So we've had some folks who have looked at this design and said, well, how is that going to work? And when they look at it, what is behind all of that is a lot of steel. So one of the things that we're doing in the value engineering process is taking a look at this design and trying to figure out a less complicated way to still deliver a building that looks the way this looks. And this is the Main Street facing side. This is the rendering from the south entry. There's a lot of brick and there's a lot of glass. And behind all that is a lot of steel cantilevered off the roof. So I'm sharing this sort of very detailed design consideration with you because I wanted to just let you know that we're going through a design charrette right now to figure out how this building, even if it's not as designed, can still be delivered in the form and the way that it looks. So we've been doing a bunch of work, but even though you're not seeing the building get demolished and you're not seeing a building get built, there's a reason at the moment that we've been working on making sure that the building that we're going to build has a viable design that is simple enough and also can be delivered in a valuable way. So mostly I just wanted to let you know sort of the status report because I feel like I'm often talking about delay, and we are looking at probably if there are structural redesigns that are needed in this building, we may be looking at demolition happening. We can still demolish the building, and we can probably do that in May. But then it's possible too that it's going to take some time to bid the rest of the contract, the subcontracts for things like structural and other elements. And so I brought a slide that what original schedule was, but that's my other message to you is that we're going to be looking for a slight delay in when the construction of the building is going to be able to start. And then finally, I just wanted to say a couple of things about communication because I think that I've really valued having an opportunity to meet with key communicators. There are about a dozen people who we invited to give us advice about this project throughout. The group is meeting monthly and they've given us a whole host of ideas about ways we can communicate about the project. Some of these are in place. I think I want to be able to have some certainty about the budget, when things are going to be happening, and the ways the community can participate. So you'll see some of these in a much more visible way once we have some certainty about the project we're going to build. And then the key communicators also put together a community outreach plan with some key messages. So I just brought those so I could share them with you, but we're not in a position to be sharing a whole lot or communicating a whole lot, except as you're out in the community, maybe you're getting asked about what's going on with the project. And so I'm going to be putting together some talking points so that this key communicators group, and also if you all benefit from it, I'll share those with you as well. So I think, let me think about what else I had in my report. I think with that, I would just pause and say I wanted to make sure that you knew what was going on with the project, and in case you are hearing anything out in the world or getting questions, it gives you a chance to ask questions or anything you're curious about regarding the project.
Councilor Overs.
Marty, you say that the bids that have come in have been significantly higher than they budgeted. What does significantly translate into?
We have, I'll use there's only about half the systems that we've bid out, but our electrical bid came in $400,000 over what was anticipated. And so it was, that's
What kind of percentage?
40%, but I'm sorry?
What kind of percentage?
I think that's like 30 or 40%.
Wow.
And so, but we also, what we're doing as a group is going back to the design and saying, well, what's driving a bid that looks like that? Or asking the bidders, what is it that you're looking at when you see this design that drives that? And it turns out that another design choice that has been made is to hide all of the conduit. And to do that, and also it's kind of made some choices about data, audiovisual, things that rely on electrical connections. And so I think there are some drivers of the reason the bid came in high. And so the effort by our contractor team is to, what Swinerton is get those under contract and then continue to work with them to try to bring those numbers down.
I can just recently had reason to buy a 50-foot roll of 12-2 Romex wire, and it cost me $70.
Yeah.
2 years ago, if I had paid 25, I would have been shocked. So.
I mean, wood and steel are not, they're things that we've bid yet. And luckily, Swinerton, part of the reason we chose Swinerton is that they have their own production company for the mass timber construction. And they're also the combination of FFA and Swinerton in construction, their experience. There's some places where we're going to do the best we can to, get the most out of the market, such as it is.
And if there's any way you can do a city hall cam, one of the most fascinating things was a sewage treatment process in Eastern Oregon that was a time lapse.
Yep.
Oh man, that was the most amazing thing to watch. And we tried to do that with the amphitheater Winnipeg did. And I just don't think it worked out. I would love to.
Yeah, Swinerton will do drone coverage of the site, so we may have an opportunity to work with them to do it, but a lot of the time-lapse cam that I've priced out may not be worth it.
2 frames a day is all it takes to have a really interesting outcome.
Yeah, so.
I'm done.
Councilor McKeel.
Yes, thank you. Let me lower this. Thank you. Ms. Wine, should we be concerned that the bid for the electrical, for example, came up so high when it appears that it's connected with design and not necessarily the increased costs of materials? I would think that the architect would have noted that the design would have been a little higher, the way that they, when you said the things that, like the conduits and those things.
I think that I'll say 2 things about that. I think that the I think the architects throughout the design process have been trying to deliver the building that we have asked for. And I think that, as with any design process, they do that, we do that through an iterative process. So we're a ways along in the design process. And would the architect know, I would say, you might remember last time we heard from Troy Ainsworth and the FFA team, they were talking about volatility and certain costs of materials that have now changed, that there's a different set of price volatility. So yes, the architects do know about what's going on in the market at any one time, but it's also changing. So I think that, what I said earlier was at the point when you get in a bid that's much higher, this happens with our public works projects too. We ask ourselves, is it about the cost of materials? Is it about the design? Is it something about what it is we're trying to build that we should reconsider? And so should you be concerned? Not at this stage. I think that we have a construction team who's going to do a great job delivering this building, and they know that that's going to need to come in, at the maximizing the value of it for the least cost. I appreciate the question, though.
Yep. Counselor Belts?
I just wanted to note, it is interesting. I remember back when we first started talking about the building, there was a lot of concern about that much glass, about the visibility of people and security. And so I'm sure those are things that they'll be taking into consideration now, knowing that everyone on council was not like, oh, this is it, this is the design. There was quite a bit of conversation about what is appropriate amount of glass. And now knowing the concept of putting brick over glass, that does require quite a bit of structural within the interior. So I'm glad you're actually looking at that.
Yes, and for that reason, I'm also appreciative of our team, of having our I have a lot of confidence in our general contractor, and I think that our owner's rep is really doing a great job of it, just asking questions at this point. And this will probably not be the only time when we get a bid that is over budget in the next couple of months. And so I think that's another thing. My other reason for wanting to come and give you regular updates is so that this isn't surprising or concerning, but to just keep you posted about what's happening with the project.
We appreciate that. We really do.
Thank you.
I think that's all I've got for tonight, unless you have other questions.
I don't see anything, so thank you.
Thank you.
And also note in the staff report, we're still so tentative, but looking up potentially at a fence going around the property around May 2nd, and maybe a demolition event on May 5th, maybe, sort of, kind of.
I don't think the demolition event is going to be viable for May 5th, but you will see fencing up around the property on May 2nd.
Okay. All right. Great.
And I will keep you posted about a demolition event. I want to raise expectations. Thank you for reading my staff report, though.
Yes. Carol?
I just have to say that I really want to be there for the demolition. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah, my grandson said I had to record it for them. So.
If it could have been on May the 4th, like may the 4th be with you, destroy the Death Star, that would have been
No,
ideal.
that would have been really good. All
However.
right.
We're assembling ideas about what should happen at this demolition event. So
Anybody, if you wake up in the middle of the night with a great idea of how this should go.
please share.
All right, and one last item for discussion. Speaking of MyNet,
My final staff report, I won't spend a bunch of time going over, except to say that several weeks ago, I sent out to the council and asked for your feedback for any input that you had about updates to the intergovernmental agreement between Monmouth and Independence for MyNet. This agreement's been in place since 2004, and it's had various updates over time. And I think that there's an effort to, what you heard tonight from PJ was with expansion plans ahead and work that they are doing for what the future of MyNet may look like, having an up-to-date agreement between the two cities that's clear and doesn't refer to the original formation of the agency or the company. is desired. So I'm working with the interim city manager in Independence to update that language and put together, and thank you very much to Lane Shetterly, our city attorney. We've got a couple of folks reviewing this to just sort of clean up the language, and I brought you an outline of the things that we're going to be proposing as an initial draft that we'll bring forward to the council. And I just wanted you to be up to speed about what kinds of changes that we might be looking at. And I would take any other feedback, or we'll be bringing you probably an updated draft for your consideration and ratification, and I'm hoping next month.
Counselor Carey.
All of these things are good that you noted in your staff report. They're all things that are needed. Some are that are referenced are there, but thinly done or poorly done. So this will be really a nice professionalization of the agreement between the two cities. And I haven't had a chance after PJ was here, and I haven't had a chance to go back through and read to make sure that it's there. But I think that, well, in his mind, and with him at the helm, he would be very conscious of the obligation to to pay for the debt and so forth, the debt service that the cities are owed. So just some language that would make sure there's care given to extending beyond their means, that would leave us, arguably holding the proverbial bag. Now, and the what he talked about, the expansion to Dallas, that was paid for with another. We undertook no increased debt there. Same thing with the ones that he talked about. We look at Falls City and we look at some other things. I mean, that could be a potential threat to their ability to do all that. And they can get in the bit in their mouth sometimes and run hard because it's going well. And then whether it'll, so just a cautionary.
That's a great point. Thank you.
so
And I'm thinking that it's probably also a good time to mention two things. Well, one is, I think you noted in your feedback to me on the original agreements that the duties of the general manager relative to
Yes.
the board, and also the fiduciary responsibility of the board as it related to expansion, is something that I think we're going to try to take care to call out in the agreement. The other is that we have a search underway for the next general manager of Minnet, and that recruitment is about to be advertised. And I think that in the form of the person who the board ends up hiring to run the agency, is that an understanding of what the responsibilities are financially to
Yeah.
the member cities is important.
Yeah, so they're clear what their expectations.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, great feedback. All right. Thank you for that. So we will look for another draft eventually to kind of see where everyone's going on that. Get those agreements in, updated, as you say, and more professional. So, all right. That brings us to council comments or community announcements. Does anyone have anything? Councilor Oberst?
The chamber is currently running an online auction, and I would urge everyone to go look and see what's up for bid. I have a feeling that if you go to the Chamber of Commerce site, ICC, you will be able to find a link to that auction.
micc-or.org. And the awards presentation follows. That's Friday evening. At what time? Board members, chamber board members, two of whom are in the room.
Now you're gonna catch me.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
I will find out momentarily just to make sure.
I think I have it on I think I have it listed at 6 p.m. And it's a fully online event again this year.
It is, and, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
If I may add, just the board will be meeting, and the committee that has put together the award ceremony as well as the auction will be meeting after to discuss a lot of the ups and downs that we've had over the last few years because we've had to go remote, and what we would like this to be going forward. And so we will definitely be looking to get people's feedback and input on how they feel about the awards and the way in which we do that and the auction. So it'll be a good opportunity for people to say, wait, I liked it this way, or why don't you think about this? Or we used to do it this way, which we hear a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
6:30.
6:30.
6:30.
I just looked it up, 6:30 on.
Oh, yeah, I
Friday.
ended up in Michigan's chamber. Oops. That won't help us.
Live streaming awards
Oh, it's
Friday,
hard to look
April
up MI.
22nd at 6:30.
All right. And other community, yes, Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Thank you, Mayor Coons. I wanted to let everyone know that on May 25th, there will be a student-led event for George Floyd commemoration. This is a partnership between Western Oregon University Education Department, Oregon State University Art and Graphic Design students, and Western Oregon Art and Design students are banding together, and they are going to create a drawing for George Floyd commemoration. It's going to be outside on the patio, and it will be done in chalk art. And they will start around 3 o'clock, and they will continue until finished. And the community is invited to come, and they can watch the artists do this chalk drawing, but they can also leave their own messages of hope and of peace and use this time as reflection. And they can also draw or write messages in chalk. And then at 6:30, Pastor Frank Morris will lead a silent kneeling for 9 minutes. And then the community can stay afterwards as well and continue with their chalk art as well, leaving those messages. So it's a really exciting student-led event, and at just a time they wanted to get together and be together as a community and share their love of art, but also as a time of peace and reflection. So I hope that you can join. And it will be in the patio area that's right outside the education building. There on the side, it's right next to the Western Library. So, and there's a lot of events happening in May, and that's just one of them. So I hope that you can join and participate and be part of that event.
Yes.
Time-lapse photography would be cool.
Yeah, you know, that would be really exciting. And there's also going to be some student photographers from Oregon State who are going to be taking pictures.
There you go.
And it was just really neat how it happened. And they just started volunteering. And then, you know, photographers also were going to be there. So the time lapse would be really cool.
Yeah,
That would be really cool.
So on a campus map, that is called the Robert Woodcock Education
Yes.
Center, the RWEC. And there's a patio on the south side of that building.
Yes.
So
Yes.
parking near the Gentle House would for that. So that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And seeing nothing else, I did want to mention my fellow mayors around the state have been having an online conversation about passing city resolutions regarding the defense of Ukraine and the atrocities that are taking place there. And if that is something that we would like to entertain, I would be glad to draft something up, and we can consider that at our next meeting. Councillor McKeel, would you be supportive of that?
That sounds like a good idea.
Thank you. Yep, one of the first ones that responded was Bay City, Oregon. Bay City, Oregon has taken the stand to support Ukraine and the atrocities and the war that is going on there. So, all right, we'll work with our city manager and city recorder to come up with something expressing our support for Ukraine. All right, and seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.